Jane Seymour, the woman whose smile is as gentle as a streak of sunlight and whose rare heterochromatic eyes, one blue, one brown, carry not just beauty but an old wound. Few realize that the very gaze people call mystical was born from a childhood injury, a pupil permanently damaged and unable to constrict under light, forcing her to live in a world that always felt too harsh, too bright. From a tender age, Seymour carried a fragile mark within her, like an omen foreshadowing the arduous journey that lay ahead. People called her a Bond girl, America's television swan, the beloved Dr. Quinn of millions. Yet behind those glittering titles was a life tangled in trials, injuries that severed her ballet dreams, periods when Hollywood turned its back because her beauty didn't fit their mold, marriages that crumbled and left hollow spaces in her heart, and the years of bankruptcy that forced her to sell almost everything she owned just to stay afloat. The storm reached its peak the moment a simple antibiotic injection caused her heart to stop right on set. In that razor-thin instant, Jane felt herself separate from her body, watching from above, fragile, suspended between life and death. And still, Jane Seymour returned. She kept moving forward, carrying the open heart her mother once taught her to have. From that moment on, one question lingered. What forged the extraordinary endurance of a woman who seemed born only for gentleness? To find the answer, we must go back, far back, to the years when the foundations of her resilience were laid, long before she ever met the blinding light of the stage. Jane Seymour was born in 1951 in Middlesex, into an educated family still bearing the unhealed scars of war. Her father, a Polish Jewish man, grew up surrounded by stories of fleeing European violence. Her mother, a serene Dutch woman, survived internment in a Japanese prison camp in the East Indies. Two souls who stepped out from history's shadows raised Jane on strength and compassion, qualities that would later become the second skin protecting her throughout her life. Jane grew up like a seed of art waiting to bloom. Her body moved with a natural softness, every gesture radiating a refinement few children possessed. Her teachers noticed it instantly and urged her family to invest seriously. Jane was placed into the finest training programs, and soon admitted into the professional track of the London Festival Ballet, a world where discipline and passion marched side by side. She practiced from morning to evening, enduring balance drills that sent shocks of pain through her feet, spins that turned the world upside down, and hours and point until blood seeped through satin. Jane never complained. To her, ballet wasn't just an art form. It was the rhythm of her very breath. But when the future was still wide open, one slightly misaligned turn sent a sharp pain through her knee. The diagnosis that followed was as cold as a blade: ligament damage, joint instability, and her dream of a professional ballet career abruptly ended, while she was still only a girl. For someone who had spent her childhood immersed in the smell of resin, the creak of wooden floors, and ribbons tied tightly around her ankles, it wasn't just an injury. It was the collapse of identity, the end of a destiny she believed she had been born into. In the days that followed, Jane sat staring at her ballet shoes as though watching an entire life slip out of her grasp. She lingered in a limbo, no longer a dancer, yet not knowing what she was meant to become. What set Jane Seymour apart was the way she confronted pain. She didn't close her heart. Instead, she honored her mother's lifelong instruction: when the heart is wounded, let it remain open. The pain did not bury her. It became a crossroads, pushing her to search for another language through which she could tell her story. In that seemingly directionless void, Jane tried her hand at acting. Small, nameless roles, quiet auditions, tentative steps from someone trying to reassemble a self just shattered. The stage light still found her, only now in forms far removed from the balletic dream she once chased. It was her refusal to surrender after that first devastating blow that laid her initial steps onto the path of cinema, a path wider, brighter, yet shadowed by darkness she could not have imagined. The early days of this new journey were far harsher than what one might assume of a future star. Her first screen appearance in Oh, What a Lovely War, 1969, was nothing more than a fleeting figure passing across the frame, unnamed, unnoticed. Yet to Jane, it was a quiet message that the arts still had room for her, if she had the patience to stay. At 17, realizing that her full name was too long to remember or pronounce, she boldly shed Joyce Penelope Wilhelmina Frankenberg and chose the name Jane Seymour. Shorter, clearer, classical, and weighted just enough to enter a professional world. But even with effort and discipline as her armor, she could not foresee the shadows her new career would cast. Early in her career, Jane was harassed by a powerful producer. It wasn't ambiguity nor suggestive words. It was a moment that locked her inside a terror where every choice led to loss. When she refused him, he delivered a sentence cold enough to freeze her future. If you open your mouth, no one will hire you again. After that incident, Jane stepped away from acting for a while, trying to rebuild her sense of safety before returning to set. It was only many years later, when her career was stable and her age had granted her clarity, that she finally revealed the experience in an interview, speaking aloud a truth she once had to swallow in silence. In 1970s Hollywood, that wasn't a threat. It was a verdict no one could appeal. The shock crushed Jane into a wordless collapse. She was too young, too alone in a foreign land, and the path she had pinned her hopes on suddenly felt like the open jaws of a wild beast. There were nights when Jane wondered if she should turn her back on everything. At that moment, her mother's old lesson, "When your heart is hurt, don't close it," became the thread that kept her from the abyss. She didn't accuse anyone, had no protector behind her, but neither did she allow fear to consume her. That pain became an invisible armor, teaching her that to stand in the light, one must first learn to walk through darkness without losing oneself. That moment marked the harsh beginning of Jane Seymour's career. It left a deep scar, making her cautious, more fearful, yet paradoxically resolute and quietly unbreakable. That first wound, silent but razor-sharp, became the foundation of the peculiar endurance audiences would later witness. A strength not explosive, but smoldering, persistent, and astonishing in its resilience. Time passed, the early wounds faded into the background, and Jane continued her careful steps in the world of film. She took every role she could find, no matter how brief or barely visible, so long as it kept her in front of a camera. And it was that unwavering persistence that led her to the defining moment of 1973, the year Hollywood opened its doors to her in a way no one could have predicted. When the Live and Let Die production team searched for a face to play Solitaire, the mysterious fortune teller whose power depended on her untouched innocence, they sought a beauty that felt unreal, fragile, and impossible to define. And when Jane walked into the audition room, her presence was like destiny arriving on cue. Heterochromatic eyes, translucent skin, and an ethereal aura that held the room still. Not sharp, not loud, just a softness threaded with mystery. She became the obvious choice. On screen, Jane transformed into Solitaire with a rare blend of innocence and authority. Her scenes, seated among candlelight, turning tarot cards in her hands, her gaze piercing through Roger Moore, not seductive, but prophetic. Created a Bond girl unlike any before her, not merely alluring, but spellbinding. The world was captivated. Critics called Jane a face not of this world, and Hollywood collectively acknowledged a new star had arrived. Live and Let Die was a phenomenon. Overnight, Jane Seymour went from a nameless actress to a global icon. Posters bearing her image appeared everywhere. Every eye sought solitaire. It was the most explosive moment of her early career, a leap so immense even she could not have imagined it. Yet that role unwittingly chained Jane's future. The surreal qualities that dazzled audiences became the mold Hollywood refused to break. After the film's success, nearly every script she received was another version of the same woman, beautiful, enigmatic, silent, a variation of solitaire. The beauty that once gave her wings slowly narrowed into a cage, and Jane realized something crucial. Glory can be a beginning, but it can also be the first trial in the long battle against the invisible boundaries Hollywood builds around you. After Live and Let Die, Jane Seymour entered an unpredictable reality. She was more famous than ever, yet people only wanted another solitaire. The following years forced her to navigate the shadow of the very character that had made her legendary. And just when it seemed she was locked forever in the archetype of the mysterious beauty, Jane began a quiet but fierce rebellion, one she knew her career deserved. While the world still saw her as a Bond girl, Jane was already transforming. The 1980s opened like a new chapter, where she not only reclaimed her artistic voice, but delivered a breakthrough that made Hollywood stop and reconsider her entirely. The first decisive step of this metamorphosis was her role as Kathy Ames in East of Eden. Jane chose this character as if to declare that beauty is merely a shell, and true power lies in touching the darkness within human nature. Kathy was seductive yet cruel, vulnerable yet terrifying, and Jane made the audience believe every shade of her. The 1982 Golden Globe came like a seal of truth. The era of confinement was over. Jane's career was no longer confined to the narrow path of beautiful female roles. She stepped into the Scarlet Pimpernel, embodying a classical elegance alongside some of Britain's finest actors. Then came War and Remembrance, where she transformed into Natalie Henry, a character burdened with the sorrow of an entire wartime generation. Endless episodes, scenes steeped in despair, fleeting glimmers of hope. Jane performed as though she had lived every loss herself. 2 Golden Globe nominations and 1 Emmy nomination were not merely honors. They were proof of her expanding artistic stature. The apex of this creative ascent was her portrayal of Maria Callas in Onassis, one of the most emotionally complex figures of the 20th century. It was a role capable of intimidating even the most seasoned performers. Yet Jane turned it into a stage upon which to demonstrate a near supernatural ability to disappear into character. She rendered Callas fragile, yet proud, rebellious, yet desolate, a genius crushed by love and fame. That role earned Jane a prestigious Emmy, the clearest testament to her extraordinary evolution as an actress. By the late 1980s, Jane Seymour was no longer the enigmatic beauty who once stood beside James Bond. She had become the embodiment of the reborn actress, a woman who broke free from typecasting, outgrew her own legend, and stood shoulder to shoulder with the most formidable talents of her era. This period wasn't merely about reclaiming her place. It was the moment she redefined her entire career, ascending into the ranks of America's finest actresses in both film and television. That blazing foundation would carry her into the next legendary chapter, the Dr. Quinn era, where Jane Seymour didn't just perform, She touched the hearts of millions. But no matter how radiant a career becomes, it cannot shield a person from the quiet earthquakes of private life. As the 1990s dawned and Jane's fame reached its most secure point, her personal world began to fracture in ways she never anticipated. Her marriage to David Flynn, once a pillar during her struggle to rebuild herself, slowly sank beneath mounting tensions. Simultaneously, mismanagement by her former financial advisor hurled Jane into an unimaginable abyss. Her entire fortune vanished in a shockingly brief span of time. This wasn't loss or setback. It was total collapse. Jane faced the real possibility of losing her Los Angeles home, the place where she raised her children, the space she believed was her final sanctuary. She later admitted, "I had nothing left." A short sentence, but sharp as the sound of a life cracking apart. Born to a family that had survived war, Jane understood loss. But this fall still left her dazed. After years of defying Hollywood stereotypes and forging a reputation through skill alone, she now confronted something she had never imagined. Starting again from zero, at an age long past Hollywood's definition of youth, in an industry obsessed with new faces. And at the very moment darkness seemed absolute, when Jane was nearly undone by despair, an opportunity appeared. It wasn't glamorous, wasn't coveted, just a modest television script. Dr. Quinn, medicine woman. She accepted the role not because it promised fame, but because it was the only way to feed her family, pay her debts, and keep the home that was slipping from her grasp. Jane once said taking on Dr. Quinn was a decision to survive. No one, not even Jane, could have predicted that this choice would open the most legendary chapter of her career, turning a role taken out of necessity into one of American television's most iconic characters. The brilliant glow of the 1980s could not shield Jane Seymour's private life from the storm forming quietly backstage. In the early 1990s, just as her reputation felt secure and awards seemed to guarantee a bright future, life veered in an unimaginable direction. Her marriage to David Flynn, the man who had walked beside her for years, began to crack under simmering tensions. But what truly shattered Jane was not the divorce. It was what came after. Throughout the marriage, Jane had entrusted all financial matters to David Flynn and her representative. That trust became the first cut. Reckless investments, misguided contracts, and irresponsible decisions drained her fortune without her knowing. One morning, Jane awoke to the realization that she wasn't merely in debt, she was utterly bankrupt. Her Los Angeles home faced foreclosure. Her bank accounts were nearly empty. Paintings, furniture, even treasured keepsakes had to be sold just to cover immediate expenses. Jane Seymour, who once walked red carpets, held Emmy and Golden Globe statues in her hands, was now scrutinizing every bill, every meal, every dollar like someone clinging to life with her fingertips. She uttered a sentence that would haunt her forever. "I lost everything. I had nothing left but my children." It wasn't anxiety. It was the icy terror of watching her refuge crumble while 4 children still needed her, still needed a mother strong enough to stand in the middle of the storm. Jane was past 40, the age at which Hollywood turns its back on actresses without hesitation. The phone stopped ringing. Auditions disappeared. The silence grew so complete that Jane genuinely believed her career was over. When Jane seemed to have no way out, when both her personal life and her career collapsed at the same time, a small script from CBS appeared. Dr. Quinn, medicine woman. No one believed it would succeed. No one imagined it could become iconic. And Jane saw only one thing in it: a chance to keep her children's lives intact. She didn't take the role to shine. She took it to survive. Not to return to the screen, but to save the home she was about to lose. No one could have predicted that this desperate choice would lead Jane into the most defining era of her life, where she would not only rescue her family, but touch the hearts of millions of Americans. In 1993, the role of Dr. Quinn came to Jane Seymour not as a golden opportunity, but like a final lifeline thrown towards someone sinking under the weight of life. After financial turmoil that left her nearly starting from zero, Jane accepted the part with the mindset of someone who had only one option: to stand back up. "I had to work. I didn't have any other choice," she later said. That dire circumstance became a quiet fire, powerful enough to ignite the brightest chapter of her career. Jane felt an uncanny resonance. Dr. Michaela Quinn was a woman who had to fight every single day to be heard, to be seen, to exist within rigid expectations. And Jane, at that very moment, was waging the same battle in real life. When she read CBS's pilot script, a story about a female doctor surviving in the untamed American West of the 19th century, she didn't hesitate. She accepted instantly. The first days on set proved that the decision was fate. Jane didn't just play the role, she lived it. Long hours on horseback along dusty red trails, makeshift surgeries amid harsh wilderness settings, scenes woven with compassion, justice, and equality. She approached all of it with such focus and endurance that the crew had to admit, Jane didn't need a stunt double because she understood something fundamental. Audiences required a Dr. Quinn who felt real in every breath. Filming stretched over 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. The western sun could melt makeup in minutes. The nights were bitter cold. Layer upon layer of period costumes grew heavy and suffocating, turning even simple movements into a test of strength. Yet Jane remained steadfast, standing before the camera with the unwavering gaze of someone who had already walked to the edge of oblivion and refused to fall. The first episode aired in 1993 and shattered viewership records, launching a cultural phenomenon that lasted 5 years. Over 145 episodes, Jane Seymour became the heartbeat of the entire series, bringing to life a Dr. Quinn who was intelligent, strong, yet profoundly gentle, a figure American audiences called an icon of healing. The role earned her the 1996 Golden Globe. Throughout her career, Jane Seymour received numerous major honors. She won an Emmy in 1988 for Outstanding Supporting Actress for her portrayal of Maria Callas in Onassis, a Golden Globe in 1982 for East of Eden, and another Golden Globe in 1996 for Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Beyond her wins, she accumulated multiple Emmy and Golden Globe nominations across decades, cementing her status as one of Hollywood's most enduring film and television actresses. The pinnacle of national recognition came in 2000 when Jane was appointed OBE, Officer of the Order of the British Empire, by Queen Elizabeth II, a distinguished honor acknowledging her artistic and philanthropic contributions. But those accolades were merely the surface. The greater truth was this: thanks to Dr. Quinn, Jane Seymour saved herself. She rose above financial ruin, outlived the shadows of an uncertain future, and, most importantly, was reborn as one of the most influential television actresses of the 1990s. What began as a role taken to survive became a legacy. What started as desperation transformed Jane into a symbol of resilience. With Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Jane Seymour did not simply act. She revived herself. She claimed her place, and she carved her name into television history with a mark time has yet to fade. Just when Jane Seymour's name echoed across America, fate delivered another trial. One no longer tied to money or fame, but to the boundary between life and death. During a location shoot, Jane developed a mild case of pneumonia, and the on-set doctor administered a routine antibiotic injection. No one expected what happened next. Within seconds, her body went into severe anaphylactic shock. Her breathing collapsed, her pulse faltered, then disappeared. Her heart stopped. The set erupted into chaos. Doctors rushed forward, performing chest compressions, administering adrenaline, trying desperately to anchor a life slipping out of their hands. In that moment, Jane experienced something she would later recount in a voice weighted with disbelief. "I saw myself leave my body. I was looking down, watching them try to save me." Everything was eerily silent. No pain, no panic, only a pale light and the sight of frantic hands fighting to tether her back to the world. She described it as being stretched between two realms, and in that fragile threshold, she realized one simple, profound truth. She wasn't ready to go. Doctors restored her heartbeat after several minutes, or minutes far too long for a living body. When Jane opened her eyes, the first person she saw was a trembling medic, drenched in sweat. She whispered to him, "I saw you." What changed after that near-death experience was not merely her health. It was her vision of life itself. She began speaking of purpose, of gratitude, of living not just to endure, but to complete what she believed she still owed the world. "I knew I had more to do," she said. A quiet promise she folded into the rest of her life. From the moment she returned from that fragile border, Jane Seymour's journey shifted into a new chapter, deeper, more humane, and infused with a profound awareness of the value of every single day she was given. Returning from the brink of death, Jane Seymour entered the later chapters of her life as someone who had glimpsed the most precious thing she possessed: time. And once she reclaimed her time, she refused to let any prejudice, especially age, become a boundary. Hollywood has always been ruthless to women. The older they get, the fewer the roles, the dimmer the opportunities. Yet Jane, a beautiful contradiction in an unforgiving industry, found her second rebirth at the very moment others were being pushed aside. After turning 60, Jane astonished the public. She appeared in Wedding Crashers, 2005, playing a bold, seductive woman in a way no one expected from a television queen of the 90s. Her performance, humorous, nuanced, and utterly fearless, led the press to call her the woman who can redefine sensuality at any age. Not long after, she joined the Kominsky Method, a critically acclaimed series where she stood shoulder to shoulder with Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin, titans of the film world. Her seasoned acting, deft comedic timing, and magnetic presence made audiences realize one thing: Jane Seymour wasn't slowing down. She was entering a new, more powerful phase of her craft. Simultaneously, Jane continued accepting television roles of every kind: drama, comedy, supporting parts, special guest appearances. What stood out wasn't the quantity of her work, but the way she approached it. In each performance, viewers could sense that Jane was playing art. Not as someone trying to prove anything, but as a person who had understood the value of creative freedom after standing so close to death. She didn't cling to old images, didn't bend to the pressure of staying young, and refused to be boxed into any stereotype. That authenticity only deepened the audience's affection for her. And then came the most unexpected leap, after the age of 70. At a stage when most careers are expected to fade into token roles, Jane stepped into Harry Wild with the vigor of someone still chasing discovery. She took the lead as a retired literature professor, sharp-minded, irreverent, and vibrantly alive, a character almost unheard of for women of her age in mainstream media. Jane infused the role with wit, agility, and a razor-sharp charisma that instantly captivated viewers. The series became a hit and Jane Seymour earned yet another award past the age of 70, proof that true talent doesn't age, it endures. What impresses people is not merely that she continues to work, but how she works. Proactive, passionate, unafraid of challenges, unafraid of comparisons, unafraid of disappearing. In an industry that has long whispered to women that their time is up, Jane proved the opposite. Some artists become more powerful the longer they live, more resonant the more they understand life, and more capable of touching audiences precisely because of the journey etched into their hearts. At an age when many choose to retreat into the shadows, Jane Seymour still stands in the light, not for fame, but because she still has stories to tell, still believes that art can be sustained by the lived truth of a heart that has weathered storms yet remains remarkably open. Amid the dazzling milestones of her career, it is easy to forget that the spotlight reflects only a fraction of Jane Seymour's life. The roles, the awards, the endless returns that feel almost mythical. They are merely the surface of a far more layered journey. Behind each artistic triumph was a private reckoning, a quiet battle where Jane had to rebuild herself again and again. As her career expanded, as she proved that age could not silence her, the story behind the curtain revealed another chapter, a chapter of love, of marriages that could not withstand time, and of a motherhood so steadfast it nearly broke her. Jane loved fully entering marriage with a simple belief that two people could shelter each other through every upheaval. But, time and again, she discovered that love alone is not always strong enough to hold a home together. Her marriages did not end in explosive drama, but in a silent exhaustion, the kind of fatigue only those who have lived through it can understand. Waking one day to realize that the space between two people has become heavier than any argument ever could. There came a point when those fractures did more than take away companionship. They shattered her financial foundation. Jane once signed divorce papers while simultaneously confronting the truth that the assets she had entrusted to others were gone. She recalled nights spent sitting alone in a house, on the verge of foreclosure, watching her children sleep, asking herself what she would do when morning came. It was not sadness. It was the sensation of drowning, struggling to keep her own head above water while somehow holding her 4 children high enough to keep them from sinking with her. Amid all those upheavals, motherhood was not a sanctuary. It was the duty that forbade her from collapsing. Her first 2 children, Catherine and Sean, watched their mother juggle film sets, disputes, bills, and half-finished conversations spoken with eyes pretending to be strong. Then came another trial, quieter yet far more merciless, the long stretch of infertility. When her body was no longer young, when doctors shook their heads at impossible odds, when every sign told her to accept defeat, Jane still held on to the dream of having more children. At 44, she chose IVF, a decision few have the courage to face. The pregnancy was anything but serene. Soaring blood pressure, lingering pain, and medical warnings that left both her crew and her family breathless with worry. There were nights she lay in a hospital room, listening to the faltering rhythm on the monitor, holding her own hands tight just to keep from panicking. And then, Johnny and Chris arrived, crying, breathing, alive, a miracle stranger than any script she had ever performed. Jane once said that when she looked at her twins, she finally understood why every hardship had happened. So, I could know how strong I really am. What makes Jane Seymour remarkable is not that she avoided pain, but that she transformed it into a quiet force. Here was a woman who emerged from financial wreckage, from broken marriages, from dangerous pregnancies, yet still retained the ability to love. and not just to love, but to love with an open heart, just as her mother had taught her. Those seemingly disparate chapters, when pieced together, form a journey that makes one stop and wonder. How could a woman as gentle as Jane Seymour weather so many storms and still keep a light in her eyes? Amid marital fractures and the growing weight of motherhood, Jane fought to build a home solid enough for her children, even as she herself struggled with the exhaustion of prolonged goodbyes. That fatigue had barely settled when another shadow fell over her life: the passing of her parents. It was not merely a loss, it was a wound that throbbed for years. What made it unbearable was not just their absence, but the timing. Their deaths arrived like a tidal wave, threatening to drown her in overload, solitude, and helplessness. When her father passed away, Jane was in the most demanding phase of her career. Her filming schedule was a net pulled so tight she could barely breathe. She often woke before dawn, spent endless hours on set, then returned home to be a mother, the emotional anchor of a family already shaken by financial turmoil. News of her father's grave illness tore her mind in two, one half at the studio, the other at the hospital. When he died, what haunted her most was not being by his side as much as she longed to be. That involuntary failure of filial duty clung to her for months. Before that wound could heal, her mother, the woman who had survived the hell of a Japanese prison camp, the one who had gifted Jane with her life philosophy of keeping an open heart, also fell seriously ill. Jane didn't just lose a loved one, she lost the spiritual compass that had guided her since childhood. The space between the two losses was far too narrow for recovery. Just as she was learning to navigate a world without her father, the news of her mother's decline dragged her back into a wound that had never closed. She had to remain strong for her children, even when she wanted nothing more than to collapse. And she had to face a truth that pierced like ice. The people who once sheltered her were gone. From now on, every wound would have to be healed by her own hands. In her attempt to reclaim meaning amidst emotional rubble, Jane turned her mother's words into action. She chose to open her heart wider instead of shutting it down, and founded the Open Hearts Foundation as a way to keep her mother's presence alive in her life. Jane didn't stop at sentiment. Around 2010, she and her partners established the foundation in California with a mission to empower people to turn adversity into opportunity. The organization operates with Jane's distinctive blend of tenderness and pragmatism, supporting grassroots groups, funding educational programs, providing emergency aid, and organizing volunteer experiences that knit communities together. From distributing school supplies to children, to delivering crisis relief during the pandemic. Open Hearts was not a PR move. For Jane, it was the tangible form of her mother's message. Open your heart, translated into acts of compassion for those carrying their own losses. Whenever she speaks about the foundation, she calls it "my mother's voice through me," a thread binding family memory to present-day service. Those losses once nearly crushed her, but they also forged the depth, resilience, and rare empathy that define Jane Seymour today. The blows that seemed unbearable did more than carve pain into her. They gave her clarity. The more she lost, the more she understood what she was meant to preserve. The sorrow once convinced Jane her heart might never heal, yet within that darkness she found a quiet truth. If she wished to go on living, she had to move toward the light her parents had left behind. From those years of collapse and disorientation, Jane slowly rebuilt her strength by doing exactly what her parents had taught her, keeping her heart open, continuing to love, and turning grief into the momentum that carried her forward. As time softened the sharp edges of her wounds, she emerged from the darkness with a different kind of fortitude. Softer, yet more resolute. Quieter, yet more certain of what she wished to protect in the life ahead. In that quiet rebirth, a new chapter unfolded. The chapter of light after the storm. Jane continued acting, producing, and joining new television projects with a remarkable vigor for someone well into her 70s. In 2005, she officially became a United States citizen, a milestone that bridged the two halves of her journey. Born in England, forged her career in America, and ultimately choosing the U.S. as the permanent home where her family would grow. She found new love with John Zambetti, a calm, harmonious connection she once thought she no longer had the right to hope for. Jane became a grandmother, surrounded by family, still committed to her craft, and deeply devoted to the charitable mission of the Open Hearts Foundation. The foundation has distributed thousands of school supply kits to children in need, organized volunteer retreats to connect communities, and provided emergency support during the COVID-19 pandemic. Jane's philosophy has always been real impact, no matter how small, and every initiative reflects that belief with absolute clarity. She cares for her health through a balanced diet, regular exercise, and by serving as an ambassador for a heart health organization. A gesture of gratitude toward the body that has carried her through so many battles. Beyond the glow of film sets, Jane inhabits another creative world, quiet, refined, and as emotionally rich as any role she has ever played. Many are surprised to learn she is a true painter, creating art every day as if it were another way for her soul to breathe. Her paintings, flowers, landscapes, and fluid lines inspired by the open heart philosophy have been showcased in galleries across the United States. From that artistic spark, she expanded into design, jewelry, silk scarves, interiors, and lifestyle products under the Jane Seymour Designs brand. She partnered with K Jewelers to create the Open Heart collection, one of the company's most beloved lines, celebrated for its message, gentle yet powerful. A heart is only truly beautiful when it remains open. To Jane, these designs are not luxuries, they are vessels. Each piece carries fragments of the experiences that once wounded her and later healed her, transformed into small objects that can quietly comfort someone else. Looking at Jane Seymour today, a woman in her 70s who still works, still loves, still lives with the serenity of someone who has touched both light and darkness, it is easy to forget that such peace was not handed to her. It is the result of wounds paid in full. What she has now is not a gift of time, but the outcome of a long journey of self-repair, of rising again, of seeking meaning inside the very things that once caused her pain. Perhaps that is why every step she takes now carries a softness honed by years, a calmness found only in those who have faced death, fallen deeply, and still chosen to stand. Her story closes like a steady breath, guiding us toward its final truth, where the portrait of a Hollywood actress dissolves, leaving behind a real human being of flesh and spirit, a woman marked by losses, bankruptcy, heartbreak, judgment, illness, and a moment perched on the edge of death. Yet, instead of hardening, she opened. Instead of bitterness, she chose gentleness. And instead of stepping back, she continued forward. Jane Seymour's life is a reminder of a quiet kind of strength, soft resilience. A silent question lingers, inviting each of us to reflect for ourselves. What do you think about the choices Jane Seymour made? What does her journey make you realize about the gentle strength human beings are capable of? If something in her story touched you, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel. so we can continue exploring life stories as profound as this one.